I get hate. Well, I get all that, yeah. It comes with it. But I could do nothing and get hated on. I could wake up and get hated on. I was born into hate, so it's like.
I get hate. I could do nothing and get hated on. I could wake up and get hated on. I was born into hate. Pause for a second. Really sit with that. Because a 24-year-old NFL quarterback just looked directly into a camera and said that out loud, completely unfiltered, completely unbothered, completely at peace with it. No PR spin. No carefully rehearsed media answer. Just raw, honest truth from a young man who has been carrying the weight of an entire league's skepticism since before he ever took his first professional snap. And here is the thing that should stop you right in your tracks. He was not angry when he said it. He was not defensive. He was not emotional. He said it the way someone says something they figured out a long time ago. The way someone says something that no longer has power over them. And the second those words left his mouth, the entire internet shifted. Shedeur Sanders just gave the most honest, most self-aware, most genuinely jaw-dropping interview any quarterback has given heading into a training camp in recent memory. And by the time this video is done, you are going to understand exactly why this man cannot be stopped. Drop a comment right now. Are you a believer, or do you need to see it on the field first? Because by the end of this video, your answer might surprise you.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Feel like you're in extra good shape?
Yeah, well, what I say is I study my feelings this whole offseason, so I know what makes me feel good and what doesn't make me feel good. I'm so serious, like I study.
Let's be completely honest about something. NFL quarterback interviews are almost always the same thing. You get the cliches about trusting the process. You get the rehearsed lines about taking it one game at a time. You get the perfectly managed media-trained answers designed to reveal absolutely nothing and offend absolutely nobody. It is safe, it is predictable, and it puts you to sleep before the first commercial break. What Shedeur Sanders did with Apple Music host Nadeska Alexis was the complete opposite of all of that. This was not a press conference. This was not a scripted sit-down where a communications team signed off on every sentence. This was a genuine conversation between two people, and Shedeur Sanders showed up to it as exactly who he is: no mask, no filter, no armor. Just a 24-year-old man telling the truth about his life, his mind, and where he is headed. And the NFL world was completely unprepared for it. Within hours of the interview circulating online, the reaction was unlike anything we have seen from a quarterback interview in years. Browns fans were sharing it everywhere. NFL fans who had never watched a Cleveland game in their lives were suddenly bookmarking Shedeur's name. Analysts who had spent months writing him off after a rough rookie season were quietly rewatching the clip without posting anything publicly. And the comment sections across every platform were absolutely flooded with one consistent message: this kid is different. Now, to understand why this interview hit so hard, you have to understand the context going into it. Training camp is approaching. The Cleveland Browns are standing at a genuine crossroads as a franchise. They have invested in this young quarterback. They have built around him, and the pressure on him heading into year 2 is real and significant. The questions surrounding him are loud and they are everywhere. Can he make the next step? Can he command this offense? Can he be the answer that this franchise has been desperately searching for across decades of heartbreak and disappointment? Those are the questions every analyst has been asking, and most expected Shedeur to come into this interview and give the standard second-year quarterback answer. Talk about the work, talk about the improvement, talk about the team, keep it clean, keep it safe, walk away. Instead, he walked directly into the most personal, most revealing conversation of his young public life. He talked about darkness. He talked about loneliness. He talked about faith. He talked about music. He talked about community work he did quietly, out of his own pocket, with no cameras required. He talked about what it means to study your own emotions the way a coach studies film. and he talked about what it genuinely feels like to be born into a world that has been waiting to see you fail. None of that was what anyone expected, and that is precisely why nobody could look away. The NFL media cycle moves fast. Stories come and go in 24 hours, but this one did not go anywhere, because what Shedeur Sanders said in that interview did not just make headlines. It made people feel something, and in a world full of noise, that is the rarest thing of all. But what exactly did he go through that made this interview so necessary in the first place? That story is a lot darker than most people realize. Here is what the hot take machine did not spend enough time on last season. Here is what the television analysts glossed over in favor of completion percentages and box score breakdowns. Here is the part of Shedeur Sanders' story that the mainstream NFL conversation consistently, almost deliberately, left out of the frame.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
His rookie year was brutal, and not just in the way that rookie quarterback seasons are typically difficult. Yes, there is always a learning curve. Yes, every young quarterback in the history of this league has had to adjust to the speed of the professional game, the complexity of NFL defenses, and the unforgiving nature of a league where every mistake gets dissected under a microscope on national television. That is the standard cost of entry. Every rookie pays it to some degree. But Shedeur Sanders paid something extra on top of all of that. He paid a price that very few people were willing to acknowledge while it was happening. For the first time in his entire life, he was away from his family. Think about what that actually means for a moment. This is a young man who grew up in an extraordinarily close family environment. His father, Deion Sanders, was not just a parent, he was a constant presence, a coach, a mentor, a shield. His brother was competing alongside him. His family was embedded in everything he did on a football field. And then overnight, all of that was gone. He landed in Cleveland as a professional NFL quarterback, walked into a franchise in transition, and had to figure out who he was in that city, in that locker room, in that offense, completely on his own for the first time. He described it in the interview, and the way he talked about it was quiet and measured, but you could hear the weight of it underneath every word. He talked about putting on a chain just to feel like himself. Think about what that image says. A young man reaching for something familiar, something from home, just to feel grounded in an environment that felt nothing like the world he came from. He talked about watching sermons every single morning, not occasionally, every morning, because that was the thing that kept him centered when everything around him was uncertain and loud and relentless. He talked about darkness. He did not dramatize it. He did not perform it for sympathy or attention. He just acknowledged it honestly, the way someone does when they have already processed it and come out the other side. He said it was a less fun year, which is perhaps the most understated description of a genuinely difficult human experience you will ever hear from a professional athlete. And here is the part that should make every analyst who took shots at his rookie season performance sit with some genuine discomfort. He was going through all of that privately, quietly, without anyone knowing the full picture. While the critics were counting incompletions and ranking him at the bottom of quarterback tiers, he was fighting a battle that had nothing to do with football and everything to do with survival. He kept going anyway, every single day, and that tells you more about who Shedeur Sanders is than any stat line ever could. But survival was only the beginning of the story. What he built out of that darkness is where things get genuinely remarkable. Most NFL players spend their off-seasons training their bodies. They work on their footwork, they sharpen their mechanics, they put in hours in the film room studying coverages and defensive schemes. All of that is standard. All of that is expected. And Shedeur Sanders did all of that too. But he also did something that almost no professional athlete at any level talks about doing publicly. He studied his feelings. He said it himself. directly and without any self-consciousness at all. He said that he spent the entire off-season paying attention to how he feels every single day, learning what gives him energy and what takes it away, learning what situations and relationships and environments make him sharper and which ones make him slower, learning what his body and his mind need in order to operate at the absolute highest level when it counts most. And before you dismiss that as soft or unnecessary or irrelevant to football, think for 1 second about what that kind of self-knowledge actually produces on a football field. A quarterback who knows exactly what throws off his focus never lets the wrong things throw off his focus. A quarterback who has identified every source of mental drain in his life has already eliminated the invisible weight that slows down decision-making under pressure. A quarterback who understands his own emotional landscape, the way Shedeur described, understands it is a quarterback who does not get rattled. Not by the crowd, not by a bad series, not by a sideline argument, not by a blown assignment from a receiver. Because he has already done the work to know himself deeply enough that external chaos cannot reach what is happening inside. He has a salt room in his house. That detail got passed around on social media mostly as a curiosity, something people laughed about or found eccentric. But it is not eccentric, it is intentional. He has built physical spaces in his home designed specifically to restore his mental clarity. He has constructed rituals around his recovery process. He has created an environment where peace is not accidental, it is engineered. He talked about cutting out relationships that drain his energy. Not in a cold, calculating way, but in the way of someone who has finally understood that where you place your attention is where your energy goes. And he cannot afford to place his energy anywhere that does not lead directly toward where he is going. He cut out distractions. He simplified his life down to the essentials. He said that whatever happens in your personal life bleeds into how you perform on the field. And he decided that what bleeds into his performance is going to be peace, clarity, and purpose, nothing else. The result of all of that is a quarterback walking into Brown's training camp carrying less unnecessary weight than he has ever carried in his life. No noise, no chaos, no emotional debt outstanding. Just a young man who has done the internal work and is ready to let that work show up on the field. That is not just impressive for a 24-year-old. That is rare at any age, in any profession, at any level of competition. But while Shedeur was quietly building this fortress around his focus, there was a whole other conversation happening out there about him, and it was not kind. Let's talk about the villain in this story, because every great story has one, and in Shedeur Sanders' story, it is not a single person with a name and a face. It is something harder to point at and easier to ignore. It is a narrative. It is a system. It is the machinery of NFL media analysis that decided what Shedeur Sanders was before his rookie season was even halfway finished. You know the take. You have heard it 100 times across 100 platforms. The arm talent is there, but the decision-making is inconsistent. The potential is real, but the performance in the pocket under pressure is concerning. The hype is bigger than the production. The name carries more weight than the play. You have heard all of it. And if you have followed Shedeur at all over the past year, you have probably seen those takes recycled and reshared every time something did not go perfectly on the field. Here is what those takes consistently left out. Context. Complete, honest, fair context. They graded Shedeur's performance without accounting for what was happening around him. They counted the negative plays without acknowledging the circumstances that surrounded them. They applied the standard quarterback evaluation framework to a situation that was anything but standard. A rookie quarterback away from his support system for the first time. A franchise in transition. An offense still finding its identity. An environment that would have tested any quarterback at any experience level. And they looked at all of that and concluded that the quarterback was the problem. Shedeur Sanders never went on the attack about any of this. That is the thing that makes it even more striking. He did not call anyone out by name. He did not go on a media tour disputing specific criticisms. He did not subtweet analysts or go live on Instagram to air grievances. He processed everything he went through privately, turned it into music, turned it into wisdom, and came out the other side of it with his dignity completely intact. What he said in the interview was more powerful than any public clapback could ever have been. He said he was born into hate. He said he could do nothing and get hated on. And the way he said it communicated something that no rebuttal could. He said it without anger, without bitterness, without the energy of someone who needs the other side to admit they were wrong. He said it like a man who has already moved on. Like a man who has already collected the lesson, banked the wisdom, and left the criticism behind him in a room he no longer needs to visit. That is a level of emotional maturity that you genuinely do not see in professional sports very often. The instinct when you are being publicly criticized and misrepresented is to respond, to defend, to push back. Shedeur Sanders let his silence speak first, and then let his honesty in that interview speak louder than any argument ever could. The critics built a narrative. Shedeur Sanders quietly made that narrative irrelevant, and he did it without raising his voice once. But there is one more place where all of that processing went. One more thing he built from the darkness of that first year, and it revealed something about who he is that goes way beyond football. While the NFL media was debating whether Shedeur Sanders had the intangibles to be a franchise quarterback, Shedeur Sanders was in a dark room making music. And that detail matters more than it might seem at first glance. He released a track during the offseason called Turn Back, and the way he described it in the interview gives you a window into his interior world that no training camp press conference ever could. He said it was a dark record. He said it came from somewhere honest, somewhere that reflected exactly where he was emotionally during his first year in the league. He described it as less fun than the music he had made before because the year that produced it was genuinely less fun. And there is something almost startlingly honest about the simplicity of that description. He did not dress it up. He did not frame his struggle as a triumphant narrative in the moment. He called it what it was, a hard year, a dark room, a piece of music that sounds like what it actually felt like to be him. But here is the part that stopped the entire interview. He said that when he listens to that song now, he can hear exactly who he was in those moments, and he looks back at all of it and says, I made it out of that. Not I survived. Not I got through it. I made it out. Past tense. Closed chapter. Lesson learned and carried forward. There is something deeply significant about a person who can look at their darkest moments and frame them not as wounds but as evidence. Evidence that they are still here. Evidence that they bent without breaking. Evidence that the version of themselves who walked into that darkness and came out the other side is stronger, more capable, and more dangerous than the version who walked in. For Shedeur Sanders, the music was never separate from the football. It was the same conversation happening in a different language. The same fight for confidence, for identity, for purpose, just expressed through melody instead of mechanics. And the fact that he had the courage to put that darkness into a song and release it publicly while knowing the NFL world was watching says something essential about the kind of character he carries into that Browns locker room. Think about what that kind of person looks like in the fourth quarter of a tight game. Think about what that person does when the offense stalls, when the crowd turns, when the pressure peaks, and everyone in that stadium is watching to see whether he folds. He has already been to a darker place than any football game can take him. He has already sat in that room alone, processed it, turned it into art, and walked back out into the light with his belief fully intact. That is not a quarterback who cracks under pressure. That is a quarterback who has already proven in the most personal arena imaginable that pressure does not crack him. It refines him. And the confidence that came out of that refinement is something the entire league is about to reckon with. Here is a question worth sitting with. What is the actual difference between a quarterback who has talent and a quarterback who delivers on that talent consistently at the highest level? Because the NFL is full of talented quarterbacks who never quite made it. Players who had every physical tool the position demands, every measurable attribute the scouts circled on their evaluation sheets, and still could not sustain success when the weight of the moment pressed down on them. The answer, almost universally, is confidence, not the performative kind, not the kind that shows up in pre-game walkthrough hype videos or post-game celebration clips. The deep, quiet, structural kind. The kind that was built in private through hard work and self-knowledge and a clear understanding of your own purpose. The kind that does not go anywhere when the scoreboard turns against you. The kind that is so embedded in who you are that no outside voice, no critic, no bad game, no brutal week of practice can dislodge it. That is the kind of confidence Shedeur Sanders talked about in this interview. And the way he described it was so specific, so precise, and so clearly earned rather than performed that it hit differently than the standard quarterback confidence talk. He said that when things do not go to your expectations, and they do not go to other people's expectations either, you start to build a world of doubt inside yourself. He said that you begin to lose the belief in what you can do and who you are. And he said that the reason he has been able to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep competing even when that pressure was at its most intense, is because somewhere underneath all of it, the confidence never left. It stayed. Not loudly, not publicly. It just stayed. Now consider what he was describing in the context of his rookie season. He was a young quarterback, away from home, dealing with real emotional difficulty, being criticized publicly and consistently, navigating a franchise in transition, and absorbing an enormous amount of external noise about whether he was good enough. And through all of that, the internal belief held. That is not luck. That is not personality. That is something he has built and maintained through years of being in high-pressure environments, through years of being watched and judged and doubted, through years of having his every move attached to the name and legacy of his father. He learned how to locate the confidence that exists underneath the chaos and hold on to it even when everything on the surface is turbulent. He said it in the interview in the clearest possible way. He said he has no choice but to be great because he understands it. He understands the route he is on. And that understanding, that clarity about his own purpose and trajectory, is where the unshakable belief comes from. You cannot coach that into a quarterback. You cannot scheme it into existence. Either a player has built that foundation or they have not. Shedeur Sanders has built it, and the Cleveland Browns are about to find out exactly what that foundation can hold. But football is not all that defines this young man. And what he revealed about his life off the field might be the most telling thing about who he truly is. There is a version of the Shedeur Sanders story that begins and ends with football statistics. Completion percentage, yards per attempt, touchdown to interception ratio, pocket mobility, fourth quarter passer rating. All of the numbers that analysts use to build the case for or against a young quarterback. And those numbers matter. In the NFL, results are everything, and no amount of great character converts a loss into a win on the scoreboard. But character is not irrelevant to results. Character shows up in the moments that statistics do not fully capture. It shows up in how a locker room responds to its leader in the third week of a losing streak. It shows up in how a quarterback carries himself on the sideline after a turnover with 2 minutes left. It shows up in the small decisions made in practice, in film sessions, in the way a young player treats the people around him when nobody is particularly watching or grading. And what Shedeur Sanders revealed about his character in this interview goes well beyond what any stat sheet could ever tell you. He talked about what he did with his off-season time when he was not in the gym or the film room. He talked about flying into communities, out of his own pocket, no brand partnerships attached, no mandatory appearances contractually required, no publicity angle being worked by a management team. He simply showed up in places where people needed to feel seen, in areas where he was actively told by some people not to go because of safety concerns, and he went anyway. Because he wanted to be, in his own words, a light in the darkness. Sit with that for a moment. A 24-year-old NFL quarterback spending his own money, making his own arrangements, going into communities that were actively cautioned against, not for a photo opportunity, not for a social media moment, but because it was the right thing to do, because he genuinely felt the pull to give something back to people who had less, and he followed that pull without needing a single camera to validate it. People still come up to him today and thank him for those visits. That is the kind of impact that lingers. That is the kind of thing that builds genuine human connection with strangers in a way that no jersey sale or brand endorsement can manufacture. Now think about what that kind of person looks like in a locker room. Think about what it means for a group of grown men working through the grind of an NFL season to know that their quarterback is that kind of human being. The trust that comes from genuine character, the willingness of a team to run through a wall for a leader who has shown them who he actually is. That is not a small competitive advantage. That is one of the most significant advantages a franchise can have. The Cleveland Browns do not just have a quarterback with talent. Based on everything Shedeur Sanders revealed in this interview, they may have a quarterback with something rarer and more durable than talent. They may have a quarterback with genuine soul. And now the question the entire league is sitting with: when training camp opens, does all of this actually show up on the field? Let's be fair about something before we close the book on this one. Because fairness matters, and it matters particularly in a conversation about a player who has been on the receiving end of a lot of unfair analysis over the past year. The skeptics are not wrong to want proof. The NFL is a results business. It always has been, and it always will be. No interview, no matter how genuine or how emotionally resonant, wins a game on Sunday. No off-season revelation about salt rooms and morning sermons and careful emotional self-study translates directly onto a scoreboard. Shedeur Sanders is still going to have to walk out onto that practice field at training camp and prove it with his arm, his legs, his decision-making, and his leadership. Every single day, without exception. The work he has done privately is the foundation. What gets built on that foundation still needs to happen in public under pressure, with the whole world watching. And both sides of the Browns fan base understand that. The believers who have been locked in since day one understand it. The skeptics who need the receipts before they buy in understand it. And honestly, Shedeur Sanders understands it better than anyone. He is not asking for a free pass. He is not presenting this interview as a substitute for performance. He is presenting it as context, as evidence of preparation, as a window into the process behind the player that the final stat lines will eventually reflect. Here is what tips the scale for the believing side. And it is not sentiment, it is not loyalty, it is not the appeal of a good story. It is the mental side of quarterback play, which is far too often treated as a secondary consideration when it is anything but secondary. The quarterbacks who have sustained excellence in this league across long careers share one thing more consistently than any physical attribute. They are mentally built for it. They can process chaos calmly. They can carry the weight of an entire franchise without letting that weight show up as hesitation in a three-step drop. They can absorb a brutal game, reset overnight, and walk into the next week of preparation with their confidence fully loaded. Shedeur Sanders just spent an entire off-season specifically and methodically building that exact mental architecture. The self-study, the intentional environment, the elimination of distractions, the daily rituals, the emotional clarity, all of it points in the same direction. A quarterback who is more mentally ready for year 2 than most players are for year 5. The doubters are going to have a very long season ahead of them. The AFC North is about to find out what happens when a player with this level of internal preparation gets a second shot after a first year full of unfair circumstances. And if everything Shedeur Sanders showed us in that interview is real, and there is every reason to believe it is, then what is coming from the Cleveland Browns number 2 is going to make a lot of people rethink a lot of things they said far too loudly and far too soon. He was born into hate. He turned that into wisdom, and he has no choice but to be great. He said it himself, and something tells me the rest of the NFL is about to find out exactly what he meant. So here is where we land after all of it. Shedeur Sanders sat down for a conversation, and what came out of it was not a press conference. It was a portrait. A portrait of a 24-year-old man who went through genuine darkness in his first year in the most unforgiving professional league in the world, processed it with a level of emotional intelligence that most people twice his age have never developed, and came out the other side of it more locked in, more clear-headed, and more dangerous than he was when he went in. The critics built a story about him. He quietly built a better one. And training camp is where the two stories are about to collide. Whether you are a believer or you are still sitting on the fence waiting for the field to validate everything he said in that room, one thing is undeniable. This is one of the most compelling storylines in professional football right now. And Shedeur Sanders is just getting started. Here on Gridiron Ground, we are going to be covering every step of this journey as it unfolds. So if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. Drop your thoughts in the comments, believer or skeptic. Let's talk about it. See you in the next one.